Hey everyone, Jeff here, and today I'm going to dive into 10 of my favorite heavy records from the 70s. And this is a decade, I think, where heavy metal really took shape. These records were a huge influence on me, both as a listener and a player. And they're going to be in no particular order, just 10 records that hit really hard then and still do today. So some rules real fast. I only chose one record from each band, and it was a studio record. And I left out my favorite band of all time, which is probably Led Zeppelin. Or Pink Floyd. But I left out Led Zeppelin. Is Led Zeppelin a heavy band? I don't know, but it just doesn't fall into the framework of some of the other bands that are going to be on the list, and I think you probably agree with me. Now, I'd love to drop the needle on some of these records and play them for it, but as you guys have probably seen on YouTube lately, the copyright strike thing has gone out of control. So I'm just going to talk about the records. I can't play them, sadly, as much as I would like to, but I don't want to get a strike or get the video blocked or anything like that. It's not worth it. You guys probably know some of these records, and you can definitely check them out. In the comments, I'd love to hear some records that influenced you that you loved. I'm leaving some stuff out, just personal opinion, so let's have fun with it. All right, so let's get to it. So Van Halen, the debut record. When this dropped, the guitar world changed overnight. Eddie Van Halen kind of rewrote everything with Eruption. And what I love about Van Halen is super heavy but super poppy and great tunes, of course, like Run with the Devil, Eruption, Ain't Talking About Love, and Ice Cream Man. You know, the classic lineup of David Lee Roth, Eddie Van Halen, Michael Anthony, Alex Van Halen. Sort of the template. There was, in my mind, there was the big guys who came down. It was, Clapton and Hendrix and Page, Van Halen. That after that, for me, would be Yngwie Malmsteen, the guys who changed everything in the rock world. So, first on my list is going to be Van Halen, number 1. Next up is ACDC. I'm choosing Highway to Hell from 1979, and this is their 6th studio record, and this is Bon Scott's last record. Now, this is one of those bands that, of course, I could have chosen any of the 5 records before that as being one of the most influential heavy records of the 70s, but this one, I think they really Highway to Hell. I mean, it's such an amazing record with Highway to Hell. Just that opening riff is so amazing. I remember the first time I heard it, I was like, what is this? And I still love this record to this day. It also is when Mutt Lange came in, kind of really put that sound together as the AC/DC. Then after that, of course, was Back in Black after Bon Scott passed away. Great guitar playing by Angus and Malcolm. Drum, everything. Perfect record. Next up is 2112 by Rush, and it's their 4th studio record. And this was the first record that got me into Rush. I remember my friend had it. Put it on. I was like, this is just one of the coolest things I've ever heard. I love that period of Rush. I like all the periods of Rush, but Hemispheres and, of course, Moving Pictures. But this record, I think, is the seminal Rush record where they became Rush as we know it. The previous records had things like Bytor and a Snow Dog, which are alluding to things that you would hear on 2112, like Temples of Syrinx and Passage to Bangkok. It's just such... I think this is where the band started to hit their stride. Of course, Geddy Lee, Neil Peart, and Alex Lifeson. And concept record. Pretty cool. Another 70s concept record. I think what I read that the label was not really crazy about it, but it really brought the band to the forefront of, music nerddom. And we all love them. And I just love the personalities of Rush when you hear them speak. It makes me like the band even more. Just a quick break here. If you like my channel, please hit the like and subscribe button, as it helps out quite a bit, as usual. I have one of my favorite courses on sale, and it's called Solo Blues Guitar. One of the most important things and educational and helpful things I've ever worked on was to be able to play an unaccompanied blues. I give it to all my students, and I find it is so helpful for you and me as a player to, 1, work on our time, be able to play a blues, be able to throw in fills and turnarounds and have something that we can play by ourselves unaccompanied, no backing track, no band. Somebody hands you a guitar, hey man, play something. You can sit down and play a blues. This is also a great springboard for everything. Like I said, you getting your playing together builds your confidence. Also, a lot of the stuff that even we're talking about on this list, it's all blues based largely. So if you get really firm in playing the blues and confident in it, everything else really starts to kind of come together. All right, so that course is available on sale using the link above or below for a special price. Now back to the video. Next up is Machine Head from Deep Purple from 1972. And of course, this is essential listening. Machine Head gave us one of the most iconic rock riffs of all time. But of course, the whole record is killer. So you got Ian Gillan, just sounded amazing. Blackmore. Now, the first track I heard was probably Smoke on the Water, but it was Highway Star that made me flip out on this record. It was just so great and got me into Deep Purple. And the band lineup, the classic one, Ian Gillan, Ritchie Blackmore, Roger Glover, John Lord, and Ian Pace. What can be said about this record other than you gotta get it? It's just one of the best. Now, next up is one of my favorite records by one of my favorite bands. It is Rainbow, and it's Long Live Rock and Roll from 1978. It's their third studio record. Now, is this their best record? I don't know, but it's the one that first got me into them. When I first heard Kill the King, Gates of Babylon, I completely just, this was so awesome. Dio and Blackmore together, I mean, come on. So it's got that mix of the exotic stuff that Ritchie was doing in tunes like Gates of Babylon and all the great sword and sorcery lyrics that Ronnie sings, and just Ronnie's voice. My favorite rock singer or metal singer of all time. I mean, it's Ronnie James Dio, right? So the lineup was Dio, Blackmore, and the record's got Bob Daisley on bass and David Stone on keys and Cozy Powell on drums. Now, Cozy is just one of the best rock drummers of all time, and it was such a bummer when he passed away, but if you're not familiar with Cozy Powell, he's just the guy. Apparently, they brought in Bob Daisley and David Stone a little late. I don't think Bob Daisley played on the record. That's what I've been reading. Who knows? The internet. It was Blackmore playing bass on the record. Now, of course, Bob Daisley went on to write all those great Ozzy hits that he might not have gotten credit for from the first few records, the records with Randy and the records with Jakey Lee. So some of the classic great Ozzy stuff was written with Bob Daisley and Lee Kerslake and Randy Rhoads and Jakey Lee. And now we're going to jump to 1976 with Thin Lizzy's Jailbreak. And this is one of the greatest two-guitar bands ever. Set the kind of the framework for those great harmonized leads that you hear Iron Maiden and Priest really play up. Is it metal? I don't know. Hard rock? Who knows? But it is a great record. Of course, Phil Lynott unfortunately passed away. It's got Scott Gorham, Brian Robertson, and Brian Downey. It was their breakout record in the States with Boys Are Back in Town. Other great songs in there, Cowboy Song, and my favorite song probably by them is Emerald. So if you're not familiar with this record, it's just great top to bottom. Classic record. If you're not in love with that record like I am, definitely check it out. Next up is Judas Priest, Stained Class, and this is from 1978, and it's their fourth studio record. And I think this is a bit of a sleeper pick. I don't know. I'm a big Priest fan, but it's sort of a forward-thinking record. It's really heavy. Halford sounds amazing on it. I love the guitar sounds. They're still in the 70s, not overly distorted. Sounds just like mic'd Marshall plexis. You can just hear how raw this record sounds. And some of the stuff really borders on early speed metal tunes like Exciter. And you've got Beyond the Realms of Death and Stained Class, and Better by You, Better by Me. Just a great record from top to bottom. Classic lineup of Rob Halford, Glenn Tipton, KK Downing, Ian Hill, and Les Binks on drums at that point. Now, this was a tough one because I love Sad Wings of Destiny, because you've got Dreamer Deceiver and Victim of Changes and The Ripper. But as a whole, from top to bottom, I love this record. I think it's the strongest one of that period. Of course, your opinion may differ, but that's what's fun about this. These are just my opinions. And it really just set up where they were going to be one of the biggest bands of the 80s and into the 90s, and still sounding amazing to this day. Now we come to Taken by Force by the Scorpions from 1977. And this is their fifth studio record. There's a few other ones. Is it In Trance? I don't know. Or is it Love Drive? The reason why I chose this one is because it has Uli John Roth on it. It was my introduction to him with Sales of Sharon. And it's his last record with them. And then they did Love Drive, which is a great record as well. It's got some Schenker on there. I think Matthias Job is also on that one. And I love the 80s period of the Scorpions as well. But for me, with Sales of Sharon, it just blew my mind. I was getting into Yngwie. He was exploding on the scene when I was really becoming, forming. I was getting into Blackmore, and then I heard Sales of Sharon, which totally blew my mind. And I was like, oh, it's kind of where Yngwie's getting some of this stuff as well. Classic lineup with the band: Klaus Meine, Uli John Roth, Rudolf Schenker, Francis Buchholz, and it was actually Herman Rarebell's first record, as I understand. I don't know. Sales of Sharon might be one of the most perfect guitar solos of all time. And I just love this period of the Scorpions, the 70s. I prefer it to the 80s period. So if you're not familiar with the 70s Scorpions, definitely check it out. Steeped in Hendrix, this hard rock thing, very European sounding, freaking awesome. Now, next up is one of my favorite bands, and I think a very underrated band, if you ask me, and that is UFO. And I'm choosing UFO's Force It from 1975, and it's their fourth studio record. It's kind of tough to choose because I like all their records, but for me, this is like the one that's got the most hits. It's the one that I always come back to and it grabbed me the most. Strangers in the Night is probably my favorite one. That's the live record, but that's kind of a greatest hits. Anyway, Schenker is amazing on this record. His guitar tone is killer. His phrasing, his tone. It's just like this great late 70s guitar thing going on, and it was just so good. I think the songwriting is great. My favorite tracks, well, the key tracks, Let It Roll, Mother Mary, and This Kids. Phil Mogg, Michael Schenker, Pete Way, Andy Parker, and Paul Raymond. So to me, that's the classic lineup, and that's the one that held on for quite some time. So UFO, Force It. If you're not familiar with the record, like all these ones that I recommend, I highly suggest you check it out. Now, I didn't put these in any order, but I saved the number one record to last, and that, of course, is Black Sabbath's Paranoid from 1970. It's their second studio record right after Black Sabbath, which is an amazing record, one of my favorites as well. But this one pretty much wrote the rule book. I mean, Sabbath's dark, heavy riffs and Tony Iommi's great playing and Geezer Butler and in my mind, I don't know, underrated Bill Ward, that swing that the band had is just still amazing to me. It's like, it's heavy, but it grooves. Whereas I think some of the later bands lack some of their groove. They could be heavy, but they didn't take that bluesy groove thing that Sabbath really had. I mean, you know, Tony's the riff master. The War Pigs, Paranoid, Fairies Wear Boots. You know, if somebody says to me, what does Black Sabbath sound like? I'm going to play them War Pigs. To me, that's, I don't know, it's hard to say. There's so many great ones. But this is one of those bands that, like, I probably would have picked 5 records, Volume 4, Master of Reality, the first record. They're all just amazing. So, number one, though, is Black Sabbath, Paranoid, and, of course, the tune Paranoid, which, you know, we might feel like is a little tired at this point. Apparently, Ozzy just thought it was kind of filler, and they had to pull a song together for the record, and it turned out to be the biggest song that they ever did. So, Black Sabbath, Paranoid. So, while filming this video, I got the news that Ozzy Osbourne had passed away. So I just want to say a few things about him and the effect that he had on my life and pretty much, I don't know, millions and millions of other people. I first became aware of him, of course, with Black Sabbath, and I was young enough that I didn't really know the band that well, but I had heard Paranoid and thought it was great, and then I got the Paranoid record, and I started reading the liner notes and War Pigs and all that stuff, and then got all the Sabbath records. And that was just about the point when I started getting into Sabbath that he had already left the band, and then he put out Blizzard of Oz. And that was, for me, like so many guys my age at that time, a world life-changing experience. Especially Mr. Crowley. My friend had recorded it on a cassette for me, and I remember taking out the garbage at the house with the Walkman on, so I'll show you what year it was. And Mr. Crowley was first. It wasn't I Don't Know, so I always thought Mr. Crowley was the first song, and that was just the coolest thing I'd ever heard. Still kind of is. Then I loved the Jakey Lee period. Jakey Lee's one of my big rock guitar influences. I just loved the way he played on those records. He was always so cool looking too, right? And I think he's pretty unique, and I think, is he underrated? I don't know, not among me and my friends. We all think he was spectacular. And by the time the Zach period got around, I was still kind of into it, but at that point I got to music school, and I was definitely getting more into fusion and other things like that, and my interest in some of that stuff wasn't the same. But I still always come back to those 4 Ozzy records, the Jake records and the Randy records, and all the Sabbath records. So on this list, Paranoid's number 1, but it could have been for me Master of Reality, Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, even the first one, which I don't forget, I think that's 69 or was that 70? I don't remember off the top of my head because I'm just doing this live. All those Sabbath records, Sabotage, you know, all of them are so big for me. So totally bummed that Ozzy's gone. Someone I've been listening to for all of my kind of musically conscious life. So like all of us, I think we're kind of bummed and getting that point where a lot of our heroes are going. So, you know, it's a way of saying thanks for everything.